Or hello and welcome everybody back to the video. I'm your SimCA5 means I'm your flight instructor for any sim purposes. If you have questions on Microsoft, P3, DCS, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to answer as best I can. In saying that, I'm also a real-world CRJ pilot, so fly 900 in real life. If you have questions on the CRJ, leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to answer that as well. Or just general aviation questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Today we'll be taking a look at a topic that I'd like to discuss. And you can choose to use the tips in this video, or you can choose to not. It's completely up to you, and it's just for entertainment and instructional use. So if you want to use it, by all means, go ahead. And if you want to just do whatever you want as well, it's your sim the way you want to use it. Go ahead and do what you like. But this video is going to address some things I've seen, how people fly the CRJ, things that are basically wrong. I was gonna say not necessarily wrong, but yeah, they're basically wrong, and so we're gonna try to correct that in a couple quick little tips. The first couple will be I have a list here that I wrote. So there's actually gonna be one that's gonna be not really anything wrong, it's just a recommendation. The rest are I've just seen performed incorrectly, or some tips may really vastly improve the way you enjoy this airplane, because if you don't treat the airplane well, in the CRJ land, it won't treat you well. It's not very forgiving airplane. So hopefully this video helps with that. So the first thing we're going to talk about are my control settings. So if you leave this aircraft by default, it is way too sensitive. Moving the ailerons and the elevators and the rudder, everything like reacts crazily quickly, and the airplane just wobbles. So the control settings I'm using, I've customly tuned to a Boeing TCA yoke and my wing rudder pedals. They may not work for everybody, but this is what I think the airplane, from my world experience, translates into the sim would feel like, as best as I can possibly make it. So this is the Joy X, this is our roll, and the Joy Y, which is the pitch. So I've set these as you can see, and you can go ahead and set these guys up. You can make changes to it, whatever you want to do. These are just my settings, but this is what feels the most real to me and should make the aircraft a lot more stable. Next is the rudder. So the rudder pedals here, these are the brakes. So I've made them overly touchy, and in real life, they are very, very sensitive brakes. They're steel brakes, so the tiny bit of tippy toe pressure, and they're going to activate, and it's a lot of braking force. And then on the joystick, or sorry, on the rudder, on the Z-axis, this is our left and right on the rudder. So you can map that as you see there. By the way, guys, if you don't know how to make multiple profiles, you can go to Open Preset Manager, and then you can copy to save all your controls that you've mapped with that yoke or whatever you have, and then you can rename it something else to make it for the CRJ. Like I have a CRJ one, I have a default, I have a 737, so I've just different, I have different settings for planes I fly. The next thing we're going to move on to is the difference between Toga mode and Toga thrust. So just because you select this to Toga does not mean you're set up correctly for takeoff. Notice how we have pitch and roll in our FMA. The FMA is the flight mode annunciator. It's this portion at the top of the PFD, the primary flight display. So this is the PFD, the primary flight display, and at the top of it is our FMA. Anything that's active or in an active flight mode will be in green, and anything that's going to be armed, I don't know, my trim is going nuts there, but I think my autopilot is engaged somehow. Let's bring that back down. But anything that's active will be in green, and anything that's armed to be active later will be in white on this side. So white will soon become green is the methodology there. So we never take off in roll or pitch mode because our flight directors aren't going to give us the correct symbology. Obviously, in a VFR day, you'll be able to see outside and do, pitch properly, but if it was, a low IFR day, you couldn't pitch for the flight director, as it wouldn't give you any pinch information. You're in pitch mode. It's just going to stay at the pitch it was set to, which in this case, it's level right now. So we have to take off in Toga mode. Toga mode is takeoff or go-around mode. And what this will do is it will say TO and TO on the ground for takeoff, and it'll set a lateral portion of the takeoff, which should be just straight down the pipe. And then a vertical mode, which should give you V2 plus 10 or so when you pitch for it. To do this, we're going to click the button on the throttle. I have mapped this button in my controls as well. I believe it's just called Toga in the throttle section. So you just click this button, or you can hit your mapped button, and now you'll get TO. Notice the flight director has moved up in the vertical portion. So when we take off, we're going to start pitching for that. And in real life, that flight director will change depending on atmospheric conditions and weight and all that kind of stuff. But usually it's around the 15 to 17 degree mark nose up to maintain a V2 plus 10 area. So now that you have that, and next thing I'll mention on takeoff and during flight, I see a lot of people flying around with all these messages displayed. And before I was flying the CRJ real world a long time ago in the sim, I would do the same, but what we want to do in real world is box these messages, so kind of like silencing them, or kind of like canceling the recall on a triple, I guess you can say. But you press stat, and that will put all those messages in a messages box. And if anything new pops up, that's a status message, it will reopen the list. You don't have to click this; it'll reopen for you. So, for example, if I turn the seatbelts off and turn it back on. Notice the list is reopened because seatbelts has gone right up to the top. If I box that again, and no smoking off, back on, no smoking should reappear and back at the top. That's correct, right? So we always box these because the newest item will be at the top. Same if it's having a very bad day and you got a lot of cautions going on. Same with the cautions, you can cast to box the cautions, and the newest caution will appear at the top if everything's already been reviewed. The next thing is trim setting. So I see a lot of people taking off with random, just default 7.5 trim that you spawn with. If you go to performance and you have all your weight stuff plugged in, or you've even gotten it from the OFP, you're going to get it down here at a takeoff trim. So this is requiring a 6.8 right now. So we'll go ahead and set 6.8 with our stab trim, and this can be done with your trim settings on your yoke. You should have a trim button. It's stab trim, nose up, nose down. And in the CRJ in the sim, if you don't have this correctly set, the airplane feels quite awkward to fly on takeoff. So be sure to have that set for yourself, as it'll make your takeoff experience a lot better as well. Okay, we're going to talk about FMA versus FCP, or fact versus fiction. We kind of touched on what an FMA is already, which is this top part here. This is the flight mode annunciator, FMA, and the FCP is this right here, called the flight control panel. So also known as MCP in the Boeing and FCU in the Airbus. Same thing. This is how you control the autopilot, and if the autopilot's off, this is how you control your flight directors. So anything here is what we call fiction, meaning you can click all you want, but unless the FMA shows what's active, then we don't trust it. So we always trust what's active. Right now active is takeoff, right? If I go ahead and click heading mode, just because I clicked there, we want to verify that heading is actually turned green, and notice now pitch is there. So we'll go back to takeoff, and by the way, in the further update, selecting heading will not do pitch. It shouldn't do that. But that's an example of check your FMA, because it is a bug in the airplane, but I would have never found that bug if I just clicked, heading mode, and let's say I wasn't climbing away. I'm like, hey, why am I in pitch now, right? So FMA is always the key, and that'll be getting fixed, I've been told. So fiction, fact. I see this a lot on streams and stuff. Why is my airplane turning? Why isn't this happening? I'm in nav mode. It's like you're not in nav mode. If it doesn't say FMS1 or FMS2 captured in green, you're not in nav mode. So that'll be fact versus fiction. It's a very common term, and it's used in all the jets, right? 37, triple, doesn't matter. There's always the fiction is the autopilot panel, whatever you want to call it, and the fact is the FMA, flight mode annunciator. Okay, next on my list here, I have covered that. I'm going to talk about some various switches I see always just kind of played with. So these guys right here, the bleed source, the ISO valve here, these do absolutely nothing if your bleed valves are in auto, because they're automatic. So if I go to the ECS page, currently the APU is off, the isolation valve is closed. Let's say you want to open that isolation valve, people will go, okay, select it to open. Nothing happens because it's in automatic. So what we do is, if you need to use manual mode, which you shouldn't, but if you need to use manual mode, select your settings inside the box first, and then select the switch to manual. So bleed source, both engines, isolation valve open, manual, and now the isolation valve is open. So that works. I see a lot of people with the bleed valves in auto, and they're like, yeah, bleed source APU, the isolation valve's open, does nothing. It does absolutely nothing for you unless the bleed valves are in auto. Bleed valves closed, you may ask why we'd use that. For de-icing on the ground, we'll go the bleeds to closed. Go back to auto, everything re-energizes by itself. In saying that, your packs, I see people starting the engines with packs off. Don't need to do that. It's all automatic, as we just discussed, so leave them on. And once you select your engine starter, either left or right, the packs will automatically shut off and provide air to the starter. So it's a little smarter than the 3.7 in that way. The next thing on my list was the ignition. I see a lot of people starting the airplane with ignition and taking off with ignition when it's not required. So starting the airplane with ignition, absolutely not required. It's not an ignition like your car. You don't need to like prime the ignition or anything. Like, you don't have to, nothing like that. The starter takes care of all that. The 900, all the jets you have in the sim, the 550, 700, 900, 1000, they all have FADEC. FADEC is the onboard engine computer, basically, and it's going to take care of all parameters in terms of starting and the thrust settings and all that kind of stuff. So don't need the ignition for the startup. On takeoff, depending on the conditions on side, like heavy precip, very high crossing outside 30 degrees off the nose, you can consider wake turbulence, maybe birds, stuff like that. On takeoff, it can be used. We don't use it all that much unless the conditions outside call for it, but it's not like a 737 where it's automatically ignition's on. It doesn't work like that. Moving down, the hydraulic pumps I see in all sorts of different configurations on streams I watch. We'll talk about them very quickly. We have 4 switches. Each switch controls a different pump. 1, 3, and 2 are all B pumps. The B's are missing, but they are all B pumps, and I'll show you in a second. The only primary pump, the only A pump that you can control with a switch is 3A. So we'll put these back to auto, 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 and on. Notice there's no auto for 3A, because 3A is either on or it's off. So you might think, well, what does auto do then? So let's look at the hydraulic page. We have 1A from the engine, 1B backup, 3A, it's let's say electrical hydraulic pump, primary, and then 3B backup, 2B, and 2A right engine primary pump. The only A pump we can control is 3A. That's either on or off. Auto, the reason why all the B pumps are working right now is because my flaps are selected out of 0. Right now they're selected to flap 8. While I select them to flap 0, the B pumps all turn off. So that's what auto does. If you turn them all to on, then they're running all the time. But that's just wear and tear on pumps. You don't need that, so leave them in auto. Anytime you're in the CRJ next time and the flaps come down and you hear an increased whining noise, that's all the B pumps turning on. So for once we're on the pushback, just before pushback actually, these are all auto on, we call it. Auto on, auto, auto. That's how they should be. Next in the list of switches, the hydraulic, we covered that story. The reversers, I see people arming reversers at different times. Before you even program the FMS, the reversers have been selected on. So that's part of the originating check stuff. Some companies may do it differently here and there, but definitely before pushback, the reversers are on. Same with the stab trim, mock trim, and yaw dampeners. These are all engaged before pushback. Stab, mock, and yaw damper. You don't want to get to the pushback and say, oh, my yaw damper doesn't work. So that covers all that. The next thing we're going to have to do is in the air. So let's jump up and cover the next thing. Alright guys, so we just taken off, and very quickly I want to cover this actually very quickly here. We're not really going anywhere. I don't even have a route plugged in. I'm just taking off and going up to an altitude. But I want to cover this PFD menu selection here. If you're going to be pilot flying, most people are flying from the left-hand side, so we'll select left side. Pilot flying is going to have the window of VNAV selected, and this is going to change their format here so you can get all the green text showing up later on. And the pilot monitoring in this case will be the right side. They'll get the on function, which would give you information like distance to your next waypoints and all this. Well, actually, they both get that, but more important, you'll get the estimated fuel on landing and some extra information there. So be sure to go down here to the MFD menu on the FMS. I recommend turning airports off. You can have them if you like, but I don't use them. So you can click anything you like here. Most crews, and myself included, like speed, altitude, and range alt select, and that's it. Alright guys, so we're just leveling off at our cruise altitude of 28,000 feet, and I'm going to show you guys how to maintain your speed in a nice way. So we're already kind of at our selected speed. Let's say you're in the climb thrust setting, you just leveled off, right? And obviously your thrust is going to keep going up. What we do is we're going to bring the thrust back right to about this screw between the climb, maybe just slightly above the screw head there. And what you're looking for is a fuel flow of about 1,800 pounds per hour. Notice we're going a little bit under, actually pretty decent. So once that's been set, take a look at your speed trend. We're going to zoom as much as possible. Notice this little speed trend here. We're slightly accelerating. So let's try to get back to the bucket. We're going to reduce maybe behind the screw a little bit just to get under. By the way, the screw's not meant for anything. The screw really is there in real life, but it's just a reference I'm using. Let's get back to 280, and we're going to increase our thrust back to slightly high was too fast, so maybe just on the screw there. And you'll see that's roughly going to be, again, slightly accelerating, so the tiniest of little bit of movements there. And the speed is slowly decreasing. The smallest bit decrease, so we're just going to move these up with a bit of pressure. I don't know if you saw that right throttle come up a little bit. Left throttle, just a tiniest bit. Let it all stabilize. And now our speed's going to stay pretty true. So you shouldn't have to make massive adjustments. If you're making massive adjustments and your speed's going everywhere, it's not the airplane, it's PIO, pilot-induced oscillation, just in the throttle sense, I guess, not with the actual pitch and roll. So make sure to just make very small movements in your thrust, and you'll get there. Notice we're around 1,800 pounds per hour. That's usually the golden number. So it's usually around 1,750, 1,850, depending on altitude, obviously, and speed you're trying to hold. But yeah, so hopefully that helps you. And the last thing we're going to be covering today is our green versus white needles. So white needle navigation is this guy right here, is FMS navigation, while we're using direct twos and all that kind of stuff with FMS waypoints. If I went to the nav source here and selected inwards toward the screen, that would be green needle first. Green needle is for, and we'll go heading because it's it'll kick off FMS. Green needle is for any ILS or VOR usage. So to simplify it, white needles is for FMS. You're using direct twos and all this kind of stuff. You're using this guy. Green needles for ILS and VOR. You can't use them for different things. I can't use green needle and go direct to a waypoint on green. It won't let me. It just won't let me do it. Notice I click nav. It says VOR2 armed. It doesn't know. It can't go FMS. I have to be in white needles to go on the FMS navigation. And to add to this, I'll show you guys two ways to capture a localizer as well with green needle. So I'll shoot us back down to 3,000 feet, and we will capture the ILS 30 left into Minneapolis. So see you there. Okay, so we're just inbound to this waypoint called Narco, which is on the ILS 30 left on the this initial fix there, and it wants us at 3,000, so we're just setting an alt captain for 3,000. We got our flap set to 8 and so on. Anyways, we're in FMS 2 going towards Narco, and let's say they said, you know, clear for the approach, you know, ILS 30 left, whatever. You have two options, and I'm going to pause here. You have two options to get to green needles, which is your ILS capturing mode. You can either select both nav sources to inwards towards the screens that gives you green. Before you do that, make sure you're on heading mode, or else it'll give you roll. Or you can do the NG feature, and this is a next generation feature only. So if you're trying to replicate that you're not flying an NG, the non-NGs can't do this. But the NG has something called auto nav transfer. So I'll show you the NG way first, and then I'll show you the old classic way second. The classic way is the way I do it the most, even in real life, even on the NG, because sometimes auto nav messes up. So just to make sure it captures correctly, I'll show you the second one. The second one is the one I want you guys to use. I'll just show you the first one quickly. So let's go ahead, and we're going to press in white needles. Both are in white needles. We're going to click approach, and it's going to arm loc 0 and glides up. Should say loc 2 because we're flying from the right side with the right arrow. But anyways, once we capture, this is our blue preview ILS. Doesn't mean we're flying the ILS. That's a preview ILS. We have to be in green needles for ILS. Once it captures the localizer, though, out of the pause, it's climbing for some reason. But anyways, after we capture the localizer, though, white needle should automatically switch to green needle, which that's why it's called auto nav to nav transfer. It changes from white navigation to green automatically. So we'll see this take place. Okay, it's capturing. It's going towards the white needle side of the course, but we need that localizer to come on in. Now this actually happens sometimes in real life. This is why I don't use it. Sometimes the white needle course is not completely correct on the localizer course. So what ends up happening is this situation right here, and you're not actually on the localizer, and now you're drifting high on the slope. Now if you've been cleared for the approach and it's cleared for the visual, you can technically start descending, because it is visual if you've been cleared to a visual in this consideration, in the visual case. But this is what it leads to. Notice how we're not on the localizer, we're on an FMS navigation. So sometimes you have to kind of steer into a little bit. We'll go heading mode, approach, there it goes. Loc 2 captured. That happened to us in real life, so that does happen. Not all the time, but that will happen sometimes if you're using that auto nav feature. And I'll just notice that the course is completely opposite. Let's go ahead and fix that. That's, you got to watch that in this in the CRJ, in the sim. The course will be sometimes wrong. Now I'm going to show you the other way, which I prefer in real life, and I prefer in the sim a hell of a lot more. Alright guys, so now we're navigating towards Narco again, and then let's say they said cleared for the approach, or cleared ILS 30 left, or whatever they say. Now what we're going to do is heading sync, heading mode, green needle, arm approach, loc 0, glide slope armed. This is the best way in the CRJ to make sure you grab that localizer. Again, that auto nav transfer is nice when it works. Doesn't always work all that much. Look at this beautiful loc 2 captured right away. Right, and we'll spin the heading just to match it up, and we'll go gear down. Right, you can start doing your landing checks and all that kind of stuff, and it's about to be glide slope capture as well. So that's my preferred method in the sim and in real life as well. Nav to nav transfer is all fancy and cool, doesn't work all that great sometimes. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I would just do green, go manual. In the CRJ, manually doing things is usually the better option, because the automatic stuff, you gotta watch it. You have to be careful. Alright guys, so thank you for watching so much, and we'll leave you off with a landing here. We're capturing the Loc 2, everything's set up and ready to go. So again, at the start of this video I said you can use this information, you don't have to use it. If you use it, that's great, and it'll make you a bit more of a realistic simmer in that case. If you don't use it, that's fine as well. Everybody can use the sim as they want. It's there to have fun. That's kind of really it. So if this did help you though, please leave a comment down below of what you learned or what you liked. Maybe you were doing some of these bad habits, and that's okay, because a lot of people are. There's 2 500 callouts there. And be sure to like it as well, and subscribe for more if you're brand new. Share it with anybody you know who flies the CRJ, as they might benefit from this as well. And let's go to this landing. Throw our flight directors off, we don't need those anymore. This is the Flight Beams Minneapolis Airport.
20, 10,